The composition of metals. Note: a considerable portion of this tract belongs more properly to the section concerned with hermetic medicine, but it is inserted at this point for the further illustration of the subject of electrum, which is somewhat shortly discussed in the foregoing treatise. The work De Compositione Metallorum is printed in separate form in the Baselvo, but it really constitutes the 6th book of the Archidoxis Magica, as they are found in the Geneva Folio. End note: if anyone denies that there is great efficacy in the composition of metals so far as relates to supernatural affairs, we will answer him, and bring forward so many proofs as shall support our own opinion and force him to subscribe thereto. For if the 7 metals were, in just and due order, compounded, mixed together, and united in the fire, you must certainly hold that in one body were conjoined and linked together all the virtues of the 7 metals. It has been seen good to call this body electrum. Its efficacy, power, and operations, moreover, shew themselves to be much greater, even supernaturally so, than exist in a latent form grafted by nature on metals in their rude condition. In those solid and rude metals are only those powers wherewith God and nature herself have endowed them. Gold, indeed, is the noblest of all, the most precious and primary metal, if we rightly consider it, and we are not prepared to deny that leprosy in all its forms can be thereby removed from the human frame. Nor are we unaware that exterior ulcers and wounds are cured by copper and mercury. The other metals, too, have each their own excellences, and these not by any means to be despised. But we will pass over these for the moment, since you will hear of them when we come to treat concerning the life of the metals. Note, so far as the Archidoxis Magica are concerned, this promise is not fulfilled. Possibly Paracelsus intended to carry his subject further than the 7th book, which is devoted to the sigils of the planets, and has nothing of a chemical nature. But possibly also a reference is intended to the 1st book concerning the nature of things. End note. But metals cannot be used in medicine without injury, unless they be first comminuted, altered, and after being deprived of their metallic nature, transmuted into another essence. You can hope for little result from them unless the preparation which alchemy teaches shall have preceded their administration. That is, if you have not previously reduced them to their arcana, oils, balsams, quintessences, tinctures, calces, salts, crocuses, or the like, and then administered them to the patient. Moreover, the supernatural force or effect of the metals, even though it be present in them, will be of no avail unless you first prepare them according to our method in which we will instruct you. But we greatly desire that our electrum should be compounded, since it can afford great and marvelous results in proportion as it is revealed by practice. If we consented to pass over its praises in silence, we should consider that we were doing it an injury. But since its operation and mighty power surpass belief, we deem it necessary to pronounce an eulogium on its virtues and efficacy. We will defer for the moment any mention of the rude and solid metals, since they admit of no comparison with our electrum. If any appliance used for food or drink be made of this material and diligently washed, it will be impossible for any poison or drug to be placed in it. Because in our electrum there is so much sympathy towards man through the force, efficacy, and influence of the planets and the stars of Olympus, that for very pity, and as though in difficulty. Directly it is taken in hand, it betrays the poison by breaking out into a sweat and projecting spots. For this reason, our ancestors used to have their drinking cups, dishes, and other utensils made of the said material. There still remain in our age many necklaces and ornaments, such as rings, bracelets, remarkable coins, seals, figures, bells, shekels, made out of this, which of old were hidden in the earth. When they were dug up, nobody, or very few, understood them, and in their ignorance they gilded them over or tinged them with silver. It is just a mark of the ignorance of our age that it cares nothing for such objects as these. But God would not have it that such a mystery of nature and such a great treasure of his own should be hid any longer, but that what had been hidden by the more than Cimmerian darkness of the sophists should now, after a long season, come to light again. We do not assume to exhaust the virtues of our electrum. The ribald genius of the sophists would be hurt, the crowd of fools would be offended, and would receive what we said with idiotic laughter. Over and over again, we have been on our guard against scandalizing this impious crowd, so to avoid such a result, it will be safest to pass over these matters in silence. Not, however, that we can altogether pass unnoticed certain stupendous effects of our electrum. Since they came under our own eyes, we shall be able to speak the more freely concerning them, without any suspicion that we are romancing or making up a story. We have seen rings, for instance, which removed all fear of paralysis or spasm from those who wore them on their fingers. These people, too, never suffered from apoplexy or epilepsy. If an epileptic patient put such a ring on the 3rd finger, even though he be so overcome by the violence of the paroxysm as to be prostrated on the ground, he comes to himself and gets up. Here too should be added something which we do not give from the report of others, for the same we have seen with our own eyes and know by experience. If the above-mentioned ring be worn on the third finger by a man in whom any ailment is latent and growing, so that it would presently break forth in an eruption, the ring would forthwith give an indication by bursting out in a sweat, and as if seized with a sudden. Sympathy would put forth spots and become depraved in appearance, as we shall shew more fully in our book entitled Sympathy. Lastly, since I would not pass over or omit any word in favor of electrum, it is a preservation and an antidote against evil spirits. There is latent in it an operation and a conjunction of planetary influence which make us the more easily believe that the old magi in Persia and Chalda attempted and accomplished much by its aid. If we sought to enumerate all the cases specifically, we should indeed enter upon a marvelous chronicle. Not, however, to give any occasion of offense or allow persons to make a handle of this. It will suffice to have touched the subject in few words. The sophists, who are my deadliest enemies, would not hesitate to proclaim me arch-necromancer, but I cannot refrain from telling a miracle which I saw in Spain when I was at the house of a certain necromancer. He had a bell weighing perhaps 2 pounds, and by a stroke of this bell he used to summon, and to bring too, visions of many different spectres and spirits. In the interior of the bell he had engraved certain words and characters, and as soon as the sound and tinkle were heard, spirits appeared in any form he desired. Moreover, the stroke of this bell was so powerful that he produced in the midst many visions of spirits, of men, and even of cattle, whatever he wished, and then drove them away again. I saw many instances of this, but what I particularly noticed was that when he was going to do anything new, he renewed and changed the characters and the names. I did not, however, get so far as to induce this man to impart to me the secret and mystery of the names and characters. At length I began to speculate more thoroughly about this circumstance, and there came into my mind ideas which we will pass over in silence here. There was more in that bell than one can put into words, and of this be very sure, that the material of which it was composed was this electrum of ours. You will therefore have no difficulty in believing that Virgil's bell, Nola, was of such a kind as this. At its stroke, all the adulterers and adulteresses in the king's palace were so excited and alarmed that suddenly, as if struck with lightning, they rushed over the bridge into the river. Think not this story a mere fable. The thing really happened, nor be so dense as to hesitate as to whether such properties can exist. For if, as you know to be the case, a visible man can call another visible man to him by a word, and force him to do what he wants, when a mere word without the aid of arms can effect so much, much more can it be that an invisible man can do this, since he commands both the visible and the invisible man, not by the aid of a word, but by the direction of his thought. The inferior always obeys the superior, and stands to him in the light of a subject. So then, you will easily come round to our opinion if you settle it that the interior or invisible man is a kind of constellation, or firmament. For he remains latent in the senses and thoughts of the exterior, visible man, and discloses or reveals himself only by imagination. You will concede, therefore, that there are stars in man, and that their constellation is so arranged by the Olympian spirit that the man can be led and changed into quite another man. So then, I say that the same thing occurs with metals, namely, that things may be so constellated by celestial impression as to make the operation and virtue which nature originally determined really arise from the good aspect of the higher stars, and thus unfold itself, as is shewn in other books of the Orthodoxus Magica. I will subjoin, if you wish, an illustration. Let any one reduce to an amalgam gold and mercury, making a conjunction of soul and mercury, but with the preponderance of soul. Let him mix and blend them, and soon, with little labor, the two metals will become fixed. With these, if you will, you can make a tincture on Mercurius Vivus. That again can afterwards be increased and augmented with other Mercurius Vivus under the same constellation. This is indeed a great arcanum of nature. There will be a similar composition and union of gold or silver with mercury without this conjunction. For if gold be placed above mercury, so that the white fume of the mercury touch and penetrate the body of the gold will be rendered fragile and will melt with the greatest ease like wax. The process is the same with silver. This is the magnesia of the philosophers, in the finding of which Thomas of Aquinum and Rupicissa and their disciples, though they worked hard, were unsuccessful. And let nobody think it an easy matter, so to blend Mercurius Vivus in the fire with harder metals and those of tardier solution. As silver, the same thing occurs with metals, namely, that things may be so constellated by celestial impression as to make the operation and virtue which nature originally determined really arise from the good aspect of the higher stars, and thus unfold itself, as is shewn in other books of the Orthodoxus Magica. Note, moreover, it is altogether certain and experimentally proved that the mutations of time have singular force and operation, and this is especially the case when certain metals are melted and elaborated together. Further, no one can prove that the metals are devoid of life. Their oils, sulfurs, salts, and quintessences, which are the best reservatives, have enormous power in nourishing and sustaining human life, and herein altogether surpass in strength all other simples, as indeed is entirely the case with all our remedies. How, if they were devoid of life, could they awaken in the diseased and half-dead members and bodies of men a fresh and vital strength, and at the very outset restore them? I therefore boldly assert that metals and stones, equally with roots, herbs, and fruits, have a life of their own, with this distinction, however, inasmuch as metals are prepared and elaborated according to time. The efficacy of time is well known, but we will speak only of those things which are difficult and not to be grasped by the senses, but indeed are almost contrary to their evidence. Further, even signs, characters, and letters have their virtues and efficacies. Now, if the nature and property of the metal, as also the influence and operation of the heaven and of the sphere of the planets, the signification and formation of the characters, signs, and letters, together with the observation of the times, days, and hours, harmonize and agree, why should not a sign or seal composed after this manner have its own force and operation? And why, then, should not such and such a medicine, seasonably applied, benefit the head, another the vision, or a third the veins? And especially in the case of those who dislike to take other remedies into the body. Yet none of these results are possible without the heir of the Father of medicine himself, Jesus Christ, the one and true physician. Objectors may say that words or characters have no force, since they are mere signs or figures, and that none at least can compare in efficacy with the cross. But how is it that the serpent in Helvetia, Algovia, or Suabia understands the Greek phrase osi, 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 although in none of these countries is Greek so common that venomous reptiles can acquire it? How is it that the moment they hear the words, they draw in their tails, stop up their ears, and, contrary to their nature, lie motionless without doing harm to any man? By this it is shewn that characters, words, and signs have a recondite and latent force, not in the least opposed to nature, nor anything to do with superstition. It is found that these words have the same effect when they are written on paper and not uttered. So also, let it not be considered incredible that a man should be cured by medicine, even when he does not take it internally, but carries it suspended like a seal from his neck. That even in dead things there is a certain force, I prove by the example of the kingfisher, for if, when it is dead, you remove its skin and hang it up, you will see that, although it is dry, it will annually cast its old feathers and produce fresh ones of the same color. Archidoxus Magica, Book 1 for it is certain that in the very signs themselves of the planets, if they are harmonized and carried about in the required manner, according to a favorable hour and time, as regards their course, there reside great force and virtue. For none can deny that the superior stars and influences of heaven have very great weight in transient and mortal affairs. If the superior stars and planets are able to control, rule, and sway according to their will the animal man, although he be made according to the image of God, and be endowed with life and reason, how much more ought they to rule an inferior thing, that is to say, metals, stones, and images upon which they impress themselves, or which they so occupy with all their virtue and efficacy, after the manner of an influence, as though they were substantially present even as they are in the firmament? It is possible to man himself to bring these into a certain medium, wherein they may effectually operate, whether this medium be a metal, a stone, or an image. But this is most important of all, to know that the 7 planets have greater force in nothing than they possess in their proper metals. Abid, Book 7. Endnote. I will subjoin, if you wish, an illustration. Let anyone reduce to an amalgam gold and mercury, making a conjunction of Sol and mercury, but with a preponderance of Sol. Let him mix and blend them, and soon, with little labor, the 2 metals will become fixed. With these, if you will, you can make a tincture on Mercurius Vivus. That again can afterwards be increased and augmented with other Mercurius Vivus under the same constellation. This is indeed a great arcanum of nature. There will be a similar composition and union of gold or silver with mercury without this conjunction. For if gold be placed above mercury, so that the white fume of the mercury touch and penetrate the body of the gold will be rendered fragile, and will melt with the greatest ease like wax. The process is the same with silver. This is the magnesia of the philosophers, in the finding of which Thomas of Aquinum and Rupicissa and their disciples, though they worked hard, were unsuccessful. And let nobody think it an easy matter so to blend Mercurius Vivus in the fire with harder metals and those of tardier solution, as silver, copper, gold, iron, and steel, that they may quickly liquefy. Many tinctures and elixaria, essay of metals are prepared thus for transmuting metals, as will be more copiously described in other books on metallic transmutations. Note, the fourth book of the Archidoxus Magica is entitled Concerning the Transmutation of Metals and Their Time. It is literally as follows: if you seek to change gold into silver, or any given metal into any other metal, have regard to the following tabulation. Nor is it of small moment, so that you may be able to arrive at the end of your purpose more quickly and thoroughly. Schemes for the transmutation of metals. To transmute Sol into Luna, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, begin with Luna occupying the 6th grade of Cancer, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, or Virgo, as the case may be. And always in the hour of that planet into which you wish to convert gold or any of the other metals, namely Luna, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. To transmute Saturn into Sol, Luna, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, or Mercury, begin with Luna occupying the 20th grade of Leo, Scorpio, Cancer, Taurus, Pisces, or Virgo, as the case may be, in the hour of Sol, Luna, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, or Mercury, according to the metal into which you would convert Saturn. To transmute Mercury into Sol, Luna, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn, begin with the moon in the 1st grade of Leo, Virgo, Cancer, Taurus, Pisces, or Aquarius, as the case may be, in the hour of Sol, Luna, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn, according to the metal into which you would convert Mercury. To transmute Luna into Sol, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, begin with the moon in the 12th grade of Leo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aries, or Gemini, as the case may be, and in the hour of Sol, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, according to the metal into which you would convert Luna. To transmute Venus into Sol, Luna, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, begin with the moon in the 9th grade of Leo, Cancer, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, or Sagittarius, as the case may be, and in the hour of Sol, Luna, Mars, Saturn, or Mercury, according to the metal into which you would convert Venus. To convert Mars into Sol, Luna, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, begin with the moon in the 81st grade of Leo, Cancer, Taurus, Sagittarius, Scorpio, or Virgo, as the case may be, and in the hour of Sol, Luna, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, or Mercury, according to the metal into which you would convert Mars. To transmute Jupiter into Sol, Luna, Venus, Mars, Saturn, or Mercury, begin with the moon in the 3rd grade of Leo, Cancer, Libra, Virgo, Aquarius, or Pisces, as the case may be, and in the hour of Sol, Luna, Venus, Mars, Saturn, or Mercury, according to the metal into which you would convert Jupiter. For example, if you wish to change gold into silver, make a beginning in the hour of the moon, when the moon occupies the 6th grade of Cancer. And so, likewise, understand the rest of this scheme for the conversion of metals. For all terrestrial affairs, occupations, and matters of business are most conveniently and amply executed in harmony with the motions of the heavens and the planets. For all men, by the dispensations of Almighty God, are ruled and led by the power and operation of the firmament, both as to health and disease. So it is necessary before all things to have regard to this operation in the healing art. Simples very frequently push forth their virtues according to a certain rule of time. And note, the same is the case with common mercury, which with its fume penetrates all other metals and, as it were, breaks through them, calcines them, and disposes them to its own nature. Metals will coagulate this by their fume. We assert that the most extreme heat resides in mercury, and that it cannot be coagulated except by extreme cold, which is seen to exhale copiously from metals in the fire. Nothing affects metals in the fire save what is of extreme cold and unable to bear the vehemence of the fire. Such a metal is arsenic, which being liquefied ascends as a spirit from metals while they are in a state of flux. Moreover, do not lose sight of the fact that mercury is a metallic spirit, and that every spirit is more powerful than a body. So it is with mercury in reference to the other metals. Just as it is easy for a spirit to penetrate walls, so it is not difficult for mercury to penetrate metals. How many are the wonderful operations and effects of mercury on the metals? We cannot detail them all, but shall we send you away empty to some other source? We know from experiment that if mercurius vivus be sublimated from some one of the metals which has been several times calcined, and if then the calcinated metal which remains at the bottom be again reduced to its metal, it is melted in the fire as easily as lead, though it were gold, silver, copper, iron, or steel, even if it be only applied to the flame of a candle like so much wax, or as snow and ice melt before the sun. Afterwards, by digestion, for a certain time it can be changed into the metal mercury. We have mentioned this fact in our book on the resuscitation of natural things. This is the mercury of the philosophers. In this way you will prepare the mercury of gold, of Luna, of Venus, of Mars, of Jupiter, and of Saturn. Although in their books Arnold, Aristotle, and other philosophers boast about this, yet I am well assured that it was never prepared or seen by them. It will now be for you to keep this great secret and mystery of nature, and to take care that it does not fall into the hands of my adversaries, since it would be an indignity for them to get to know it. A pearl or a precious stone will not please a goose, because the goose does not know its price and value. It would infinitely prefer a turnip. We may fitly say the same of the sophists. It is no injustice to conceal secret mysteries from them. Let us not seem to cast pearls before swine, or give that which is holy to dogs, since God sternly forbids us so to do. But let us proceed to the practical work of our electrum, as we promised at the outset. We would have it prepared, compounded, and conjoined according to the revolution of the heaven and the conjunctions of the planets. We will proceed in this way. First, you must diligently observe the conjunction of Saturn and Mercury, and before this occurs, have ready the appliances you require. These are fire, a cauldron, lead cut up into minute pieces, and Mercurius vivus. Take care that nothing be wanting which the work in hand requires, or for lack of which the action may be hindered or retarded. Then when the conjunction is just going to take place, let the lead be melted in the fire, and be not quite hot when it shall have fused, lest the mercury which you pour in escape, or, if the heat be too great, pass off in smoke. Let this be done at the very moment of conjunction. Take out suddenly the cauldron with the liquid lead, pour in the mercury, and afterwards let them both be coagulated. Then there will be need of attention when the conjunction of Jupiter with Mercury or Saturn is about to take place, so that you may not be ignorant of the time or pass it by. Let everything you will want be ready to hand as I before admonished you. You must take care, before the actual moment of conjunction, to melt in one vessel fine English tin, and in the other lead with mercury. At the moment of conjunction, move the metals from the fire, slackening the heat a little, and pour all into one crucible. When they have coagulated into one body, you will have 3 metals softer and more easily melting over the fire. When they are united, let it not escape your notice that in the very first place these are to be dissolved and conjoined. Then notice when there is a conjunction of any of the other 4 planets, Sol, Luna, Venus, or Mars, with one of the 3 former, Saturn, Mercury, or Jupiter. Have all instruments and materials ready. Let them be dissolved singly first. Then, when liquefied, pour them into one at the very point of conjunction, and keep them. In a like way, proceed with other metals which are to be joined and copulated with the former, until you have reduced and united all the 7 according to the due conjunctions of the planets. So will you have prepared our electrum, concerning which enough has now been said. End of the composition of metals.